Hi, my name is Christy, and I am here to, first of all, say thank you for 200 subscribers. Oh my God. Hi, everyone. Hello. And also crochet a cardigan. It's time. Valentine's Day is coming up. I've got some red yarn and I really want to make something. When I am in need of inspiration, I like to look at the very expensive, high fashion websites because they always have something weird and interesting. And I am very judgmental of those garments. Number one, because they cost a lot of money and I don't often see where the price is going. And number two, I just think that I can do better because the difference between confidence and overconfidence is simply your skill level. And we're about to find out. This time, scrolling through Revolve, I did see something that I liked. However, it was $400 and I won't afford that. Also, I can't. So I saw this top, and what really drew me to it was obviously the little crochet dangly pieces. And I also really liked the shape of the sleeve. I thought that that was super flattering, and I really like that very slimming silhouette. So I wanted to make something like that. So what I was thinking was to make something like this cardigan, but completely reimagined and slightly themed for Valentine's Day. I don't have any Valentine's Day themed items. And I love the color red, and I don't have anything that is red that I have crocheted. So it is time. It's time to do it. The last video that I made was a tutorial. And the reason that I don't usually do tutorials is because I am just making things up as I go. And I don't even know what the next step will be until I am doing it or until I see the previous step. And it's not really possible for me to make a detailed step-by-step guide and know even what steps that I need to film and explain unless I know what those steps are going to be. So thank you so much for the love on the last video. And because so many of you wanted to see that, I'm going to try my hardest to make this video possible to follow along with if you want. But I don't know if you'll want to. We haven't seen the final product. Maybe you hate it. You'll have to find out too. So today, you guys are actually very lucky because I'm making a cardigan, which means I have to make two matching sleeves and two matching front panels for the cardigan, which means I do need to actually write down and know what I'm going to do for the second one of each. Let's get started with our preliminary steps, which are going to be finding a little heart pattern and a little flower and a rosette that I want to use, and then also try and figure out my stitch pattern that I want to use. So step one is going to be crocheting some of the little appliques. I need to be kind of stingy with the appliques because I am not going to have quite as much extra yarn as I would normally like. We're going to be playing a little bit of yarn chicken. So the last things that I'm going to make are all of the appliques to go on because we may not be able to add that many. We'll have to see. I feel pretty good because I made this top with something like 5 balls of yarn, and this is, a long sleeve top. So we should be able, with my 5 balls of yarn, be able to make a short sleeve cardigan. But you never know till you know. That's a lie. You can do math and figure it out, but I'm not going to do that. We're just going to hope. Beautiful red yarn that is a merino wool, and this is slightly more neon than I was hoping for. I was trying to buy yarn about this color, like this beret, and you can see how bright this turned out instead. But that is just fine and an excuse to buy more yarn in the future. But the main inspiration is for the little appliques that they have sewn on. So instead of doing the big spidery flower, I'm going to make something that is a little bit more like a rose. Since I am making a red cardigan, it makes more sense to lean away from the nature and a little more into Valentine. So I've got this beautiful little rosette that I'm going to make a couple of. I think I counted that I would need about 5. And then I made this 5-pointed flower. The Kokai ones are only 4-pointed, but I just like the 5-pointed ones. I think they look very cute. And then at the bottom, I have a little heart instead of a leaf because, again, we're going to go away from the nature and into Valentine's Day. I almost said Thanksgiving. Then I've got another just normal little heart, so adorable. And then finally, just a couple just normal single flowers like that. So those are what I'm going to use to decorate the final cardigan to give kind of the same look, the same vibe as the Kolgaya one, but without having, like, it doesn't make sense to me to have like nature and leaves and stuff unless the yarn is literally green, which it's not, it's red. So we are transforming this idea quite a lot. But I need to pick out a stitch pattern that is pretty solid fabric, but is not very structured, something that is going to be nice and flowy and slouchy. You can see how this fabric is able to move and just sort of slouch. So depending on the stitch that you use, you can get a different quality to the fabric. So I'm going to consult my plethora of crochet magazines and books that I have, which is where I get most of my stitch patterns. So I live in Portland, Oregon, so I'm a member of the Portland Public Library. And with that, I get access to literally thousands of magazines just on my computer. Crochet magazines have been around. That was how people used to learn how to crochet and learn new patterns, was from magazines. And you can still get the physical copies, but like just the nature of print, it is a lot more expensive. You can be paying up to $20 per magazine. And for me, it is a lot easier to just get them digitally. So I really recommend Libby or checking out what your public library has access to, because you can download as many magazines as you want. You keep them for 7 days and then they automatically return, and you can re-download them as many times as you need. My favorite is the Simply Crochet series. So I am going to go do some research and then I'll come back and let you know what stitch pattern I will be doing. It's not showing up very well. How about that? Okay. So the stitch pattern that I decided to go with is just a typical ripple stitch like you would have for an Afghan. I think that it's going to give this like big kind of goofy round shape that is going to really complement having the flowers and being on theme and being just a little silly, a little whimsical. The weird thing is I frogged it all the way back up to here once before because I was getting these like waves as I was doing my decreases. And I was like, I swear I'm doing it right, but let me, just restart and see if I can get a nice even decrease. And I couldn't. So the second time it turned out like this as well. But then I was thinking that's okay because it's wavy anyway. So the fact that the seam will be a little bit wavy through this part, it's going to fit like this, obviously. So the fact that it is fitting like that right now is fine, right? That's fine. So the big issue is I need to do this exact same thing on the other side. And that's lucky for y'all because I will have to sit down and write everything down and I'll just go through it with you. I actually really like how this is turning out. Maybe there is a way to nicely decrease the ripple stitch, but I couldn't figure it out. I'm doing this on my own without a pattern. So yeah, I think it looks really nice, right? Like, can you picture it with all the things? Are you seeing the vision? Are you feeling it? Look at that, huh? Yeah, we'll see. So we start and end the row on an increase, and I don't know why. That just keeps it even. I think if you count, we've got 4 increases and 4 decreases total, which is why the stitch count remains the same at the end. So if we want to increase the stitch count, then we actually need to be adding 3 stitches to the end here. So that is how you would do an actual increase. So I will get to that point in the project and then get back to you. I just messed up here. Got to go back. But you can see here, I'll actually point it out. I did just 5 extra stitches here, and then I noticed that it was growing row to row. So I don't really know why that happened, but because this is in the armpit, I'm going to completely ignore it. I already have just ignored it. For this panel, I am going to do it correctly and just add whatever number of stitches I ended up on with this side. And then for this part, we'll just stretch it, or something else that will work is to just sew up to this point so that this chain stitch can give us the extra dimension that we need if the armhole does need to be bigger, if it's going to come right down to it. But because this area isn't going to be seen that much, yeah, I messed up. I don't really care. And that used to really hold me back when I was designing things, was what errors are going to matter and what errors I can just ignore and continue on with. And eventually you just start continuing on. That's kind of the only way to get projects done. Because if I went back and I fixed every error that I've ever made, I would still be crocheting some of the projects that I finished a long time ago, just because I decided to power through and decided that whatever the error was, it's not a fatal flaw and it can stay, it can live. This is definitely an aesthetic and a structural issue, but it doesn't matter because no one will see it. And so I feel confident that I can ignore it. Okay, so you can see I have my 3 rows here, which are just straight, and then I'm going to start adding increases. Yeah, I started doing my increases on row 4 here, and an increase for this is just going to be 3 stitches at the end of the row instead of your normal 2 stitches. Every other row, we're going to add 3 stitches to the end instead of 2. All right, so there is our increase, just 3 stitches at the end of the row instead of 2, and then I am going to continue the pattern as normal for the rest of the row. And what you might notice is that we add the ripple pattern back in once we have enough stitches. So I just pay attention to once I have 3 flat double crochet on the previous row, then that is when I will add in the either decreases or increases section that I need in order to add the next ripple. And when I get to the end of the row here, I just do a quick little chain stitch of about 1 inch and then crochet along the fabric as if it was this long all along. And that is just going to make the armhole a little bit bigger for me. And similarly for the sleeve cap, we did the same increases, except we did the increases on both sides. And for the very first row of increases, I actually added 3 stitches to the end and 3 stitches in the first double crochet to make a more extreme increase from the top, because this is just the shape. If you were to cut off the sleeve of your favorite little fitted cap sleeve t-shirt, this is the shape that the sleeve would be, and so that is the shape that I need to crochet, and then we'll sew it on at the end. I haven't actually ever made a garment with this type of sleeve cap before, which again is why I'm like, oh, why would I make a tutorial? Why would I tell people how to do this? I don't know if my ideas are good until I've done them. But I'm bringing you along for this. We can go for this little experiment together. I don't see why it wouldn't work, but I don't know, maybe it's ugly. I don't see a lot of patterns using this type of sleeve shape. Usually just attach on and then crochet just one long tube, which that's what we're going to be. Like this is going to be the tube part at the end, but I wanted it to increase nicely and be very fitted because that's what I really liked about the Colt Gaia top was the shape of the sleeve. I'm trying to emulate that as best I can. We will see if it actually works. If it fails, you can't blame me. Wait till the end of the video and then start your own project and you can decide if it's actually worth it to go through this or not. For reference, I wear a size 6 to 8 or a medium. Right now, I am cautiously optimistic that this is going to be the best thing ever, but I always feel like that about my new projects and the thing that I'm most working on. So yeah, if I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't be working on this, but I love it.
Good evening. It is with great displeasure that I inform you that my dog is sick, and he has been sick for 50 hours, and he needs to go outside all the time, including at nighttime. So more at nighttime than in day. So it is currently midnight, and I have been working on this cardigan, but if you're sleep deprived, you make mistakes. So I had to put it down, and I played a lot of Stardew Valley, and now it is midnight, and I'm ready to pick it back up again because I'm a couple rows away from finishing the back panel. So the front panel is 39 rows, and the back panel shall also be 39 rows. Really, it should be 38 rows, and then I'll just do the 39th row, the same number of stitches on each side, so that it has a little bit of a neck hole. Don't really need to do that, but I find it fits better and more comfortably on the neck if you do that. Here is the completed back panel. You can't even see it, but I added 1 extra row on each side of the neck hole for just a little extra fabric. And serendipitously, each panel ended on a different part of the pattern. So this is mountain, valley, mountain, and this one is valley, mountain, valley, which means when I sew it together, it will be perfectly aligned. So I made them the exact length of the front panels, and then I considered adding the same amount of this kind of armpit dock on each side, but I decided that right now it's fitting a little bit loose, and I think just this like 2 to 3 inches in each side is going to be just fine. So the seam is going to sit slightly farther back, and I think if I added any rows to the side of this to have it sit more in the center, then the garment would be too big by a couple of inches. So we're not going to do that. We are just going to sew them together as is. And for the sizing for this, I like to do it in thirds. So 1/3 I allocate to be the exact same size as the top of the front panel, and then the same number of stitches in the middle for the neck, and then the same number of stitches again. You see how that is kind of like thirds there? That's what thirds mean. It is now 12:30. It's 12:35. So I'm quite happy with how they have turned out and the sizing. My goal is for this to See how the bottom of the fabric is kind of loose and you could see the ripple texture vertically as well as like horizontally. I really like that. So if the garment fit too tight, then that would be lost, right? And you would only see the ripple pattern horizontally. I am hoping that it is going to lay like this nicely across the back, and we won't know until I sew it together. And I'm pretty confident though. Like, you know, you need some pretty good spatial awareness to crochet your own clothing, and that is a skill that you can learn with time. And I'm still developing mine, but at this current moment, I am confident that I nailed it. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. So then the last things to do are to crochet the other sleeve cap and then sew that on and then crochet in the round along the sleeve.
I spent all morning scrubbing and lysoling the entire living room, and now I'm going to reward myself with trying it on before sewing it on. I got these little clips for sewing, and they are perfect for crochet. Normally with sewing, you would use pins to connect the two pieces of fabric, and with these, you can do it with crochet very, very easily. So I'm going to take some time to do that, try it on. So I was right about needing the seam to be farther back. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so cute. Well, I could not be more happy with how this is turning out. With the clips, it should shrink up a little bit. So as I sew it, it will relax a bit, which will be just fine. And then I've noticed that this yarn in general tends to really loosen up over time as well, which can be sort of exacerbated by blocking it and washing it. You might hear from the knitters that you have to block everything, but crochet is not knit, so you have to treat it differently. So for crochet garments, sometimes just spot cleaning something is the only thing you can do, where with knitting, you do have to wet block everything that you make because that's knitting. It's different. It's different. The fabric is completely different. So, you know, these two crafts get lumped together quite a lot, but they are not the same, as you know. Okay, I am very, very happy with this. The next thing I need to do is the sleeves. Well, this is going swimmingly, which is good because this is just about the only thing that is going swimmingly this weekend. North London forever. Okay, so I decided to go ahead and sew up one side with one of the sleeves on just to make sure that, you know, a proof of concept, to make sure that I'm not wasting my time here. So before I did that, I made sure to crochet an exact copy for the other side. Because once you sew something on, it is really hard to tell where you did increases and decreases on each side, and I just pulled out like 6 stitches. So I decided to sew it up so that I could see if it was actually going to work and give me the look that I want. And as far as I can tell, it is going to work. It looks beautiful, looks wonderful. So I sewed on the sleeve and sewed up the side seam here as well. So now I am going to crochet in the round to probably about exactly this length, as my jersey that I have is my kit, as they say. I'm not a huge, my husband's a real Arsenal fan, but I like all sports, so it's fun. The next thing to do is to sew up the other side, and then I will have 2 matching sleeves. But if you can see the fit of it, I have one little pucker here that I'm not sure why that is happening. Then the seam here turned out really, really nice and invisible. It is slightly farther back than would be typical for a garment, but I think that it looks nice, and that is the important part. And I had a little like big brain math moment about why, when crocheting this, the seam also turned out wavy, or the edge, the side also turned out wavy. And what I realized is that when you are crocheting this type of ripple, you're meant to end with the valley on the edge and then do an increase at the end, and then that keeps the same number of stitches. But if you are ending on a mountain part and then you do the increase on the end, you're actually adding like 3 extra stitches per row. So as we're increasing here, anytime that I have a mountain going before we get to the valley, it's going to increase a lot more, because not only am I adding stitches on the end, but I'm adding them internally. So I kind of figured out what was going on, and if I wanted to decrease or increase with a straight edge, then what you would need to do
is when you are crocheting with the valley being the last one, continue to add 2 stitches in the last stitch. And when you are crocheting with the mountain being the last part that you're doing, don't add the extra stitch at the end. And then that would have it increase slash decrease in a straight line versus this wave. But like we said, it doesn't really matter for this project. You can see that it is sewn on, the seam is wavy, but here it is completely straight, and I don't think that you would notice that that was happening with this garment unless you knew to look for it. I'm sure like an actual like fashion person would be able to pick apart my seams and what happened here. Even if they didn't know crochet, they'd be able to know something went wrong with like the cut, and they're correct. But the fit is really, really nice. I'm loving it. And yeah, so I'm going to do this exact same thing on the other side, which is just sewing it on, which I demonstrated this earlier, but these are your best friend. These type of clips to sew your crochet together are your best friend, because what happens, especially to beginners a lot, is as you're sewing up more fabric on one side than the other side, and then you get to the end and your seams are kind of sitting like this as opposed to flush at the end. But if you can take clips all the way down, then you can make sure that you are not missing any rows or, getting off track too much. So very, very exciting. So then once this sort of base thing is done, we are going to crochet a couple more appliques, and I'll show you how to do that, and we'll kind of put everything together. But so far, so good. I mean, right now that seam is basically invisible. It's just because you don't know where to look. Well, let's get the light to catch it. There it is. Yeah, there it is. Okay, that looks really, really nice. Usually my sewing does not look that nice, so I'm quite grateful for that today. All right, time to do the same thing on the other side.
I felt I had the least chance of sewing the sleeve on incorrectly if I tacked it on in the middle first. So I made sure to find the exact middle of the top of the sleeve and sew that on to the seam where I had sewed the back panel and the front panel together at the top. And then I used my clips to then sort of align the sleeve with where it's meant to go. Because this is a 3D shape, this was a little bit challenging for me to sew. I usually just sew flat rectangles, so having these clips was super helpful for this step as well. It also had the added difficulty of not being a straight seam that I am sewing together and instead being some type of wavy cut going on. It was tough, but I did it and I think it looks great. The next step was to crochet the rest of the appliques that I wanted to add on to the top, and I have included here a diagram of the heart and the flower that I have used, and also a little bit of a written pattern. It's not a completely exhaustive picture of what you need to do, but hopefully it's enough information to get the job done. To be completely honest, for the heart, I added 2 double crochet at the top of the heart, and sometimes I only added 1. I think one I definitely accidentally added 3, but it gives you the general shape of a heart most times with a little bit of room for error if you want to make it each one a little bit unique. For the flower, I did manage to do that one correctly every time, and that is just because I have a little bit of experience with this flower, and I think there is a little bit less room for error since there's just less stitches to do. In general, it's all double crochet. One thing I did make sure to do was to leave longer than usual tails on the end of each one for the start and the end, and that was so that it would be easier to sew on to the finished top when it is finished. Here I am crocheting the heart, and you can see that it ends with 2 chain stitches that get slip stitched into the middle, and then I am demonstrating how to pull the magic ring closed so that way it sort of disappears and you're just left with a cute little heart. For the flower, you can also use a magic ring if you want. I find that they're not quite sturdy enough to fit the single crochet around. It gets a little bit crowded, and I find that the magic knot kind of comes undone over time. So I prefer to just struggle and do 3 chain stitches to make the finished loop. Sometimes it looks a little bit messy, but I think it's worth it for the extra integrity.
For the flower, in order to get 5 petals, you add 5 single crochet as the first row, and then each of those single crochet turns into its own petal. So if you wanted to make a 4-sided petal, you would just add 4 single crochet, and if you wanted to have 6 petals, then you would add 6 single crochet. Hopefully that makes sense. So I decided to make these all the same, where the hearts are all a little bit different, but you could make these all a little bit different and unique if you wanted as well. The key, in my opinion, to this flower is using slip stitches in between each sort of petal set, because this gives a really clear difference between each petal. Sometimes I see flower patterns that have just a single crochet in between petals, and to me that makes them look a little bit chubby, and I like the more drastic flower look that you get with the slip stitches that I'm demonstrated here. You slip stitch into the next single crochet, and then you start the petal from there with just a single crochet, similar to how you would at like the end of a row when you needed to start your next row. To me, this is just the cleanest method of making a flower. So here I have 2 petals finished, and they're basically all done the same way. You just work your way around until you get to the end. And I'm gonna regret cutting this string that short. I really wish I left an extra 2 or 3 inches to make it just a little bit easier for me to tie on at the end. As it happens, as it usually goes, staying up all night multiple days in a row has resulted in me getting a cold. And so I was working on the large rose appliques, and I'm on cold medicine. And they're all slightly different in their own little way. So this is the original one. It has 3 rows. And then I made one that has only 2 rows. And I made another slightly smaller one that also only has 2 rows. And I think that, Benadryl me was actually right, because the 3rd row is extra stitches, extra time, and not that much of an aesthetic difference at all. I don't even think that you would notice it, especially between these 2. The slightly smaller one you do notice because I made it a different size, but the one that is the same size, are you kidding me? It looks the same. So I am going to show you how to make the simpler 2-row version, but just a quick explanation from the back. I feel like it's easier to see on the one with 3 rows, where you add a chain stitch across the back and then do a single crochet into the row below. So that means that you sort of skip the row that you're on, crochet in the next row below, and just do a single crochet into that stitch. And so you can see right there how all of those are connected to each other, even though these are separate rows. And then you do a chain stitch behind the previous petal. And so when you're first like crocheting the rows, it will look like that. And then you kind of just pop them out and they look normal. So for the actual cardigan, I tried it on with the sleeves, and my original intention was to crochet in the round along the sleeve in order to add a couple of inches, but I tried them on with the length they are now, and I love it so much as a little tiny cap sleeves that I am going to divert from my original vision for this and to keep the little tiny cap sleeves. I just think that they turned out so adorable, and so yeah, I'm just so excited about it that I'm just going to leave them as is. So they have a little tiny cap sleeve. Then the last thing I need to do is a border around the inside, because the bottom edge is raw, but that is finished, and the sleeves are now raw but finished, because we're just going to end, we don't need a border on that. What I'm going to do is, what I usually do is I double crochet along the edge, because I think that that looks neater than a single crochet. A single crochet tends to like kind of crowd the fabric, and so you can get this like kind of ripple because there's too much going on right at the edge that the fabric has had to stretch in order to accommodate all the extra stitches. So I usually avoid single crochet for that reason. The double crochet is a bit more forgiving. If it is a little too crowded, the excess can kind of go towards the top of the stitch, and so your actual fabric doesn't ripple or anything weird happens. But I am going to single crochet for this because I want it to be a barely there sort of, I don't want it to dry your eye at all. I would leave it raw if I could, but I can't. Actually, are you okay, bud? One other decision that I have made is I think I'm going to attach all of the appliques with a bow instead of sewing them on permanently so that I can detach them and wear the cardigan without the decorations. And the reason for that is because I like this so much, I can see it becoming a staple piece in my wardrobe. And I think that having the hearts and flowers and stuff on it would limit my ability to wear it day to day, but I still want to have something fun and cute for Valentine's Day, and I want to see the finished look with everything on it. But then after Valentine's Day, I'm probably going to take all of that off and then just have this as a normal cardigan for the rest of the year. So I do love Valentine's Day, but I don't want to celebrate Valentine's Day every single day of the year. So me and my husband actually had our first kiss on Valentine's Day, and I just like pink and red, and I love a good theme. But if you're the type who doesn't like to celebrate Valentine's Day, or is going through a breakup, or just really is happy with how things are single, or you're in a very perfectly happy relationship and just don't care about Valentine's Day, I see you. But we can still have fun.
I did do a single crochet border around the inside edge of the cardigan, and it turned out great. None of that ruffling that I was worried about. If I did have that problem, I would have just sized down my hook and tried again, but we didn't need to do that. I then spent a little bit of time weaving in all of my ends, which is honestly a nice calming process for me. I always usually enjoy it. And then I attached a tie in the middle using just a chain stitch, and at the end of the chain stitch I added two of my little appliques. Okay, this is the base cardigan. I have the single crochet border, and it did kind of cut down on the waviness of the seam. It still is wavy, but that is okay. I think it looks very good, very clean. I'm glad I went with that instead of the double crochet, because I think it looks just a little bit better. And then the back is doing that thing that I wanted, where it would look slightly loose and you'd be able to see the ripples going across and then also up and down. Very, very cute. So this is what the cardigan looks like without any of the appliques added on. And then the next thing for me to do is to add them all on. But like I said, I am going to make them removable so I can have the fully decked out cardigan for a couple of weeks in February and then have it something more like this for the rest of the year. I think that the little flower and the little heart on the strings just add that little touch that it needed. And you can see the little cap sleeve that I was going to add on to, but just the way that it is fitting, no, it's perfect the way it is. I would never touch it. She's a perfect little angel baby with her little cap sleeves. Ah, I'm so happy with it. Okay, time to sew all of the little flowers on, and then that will be that. And here she is decorated with the little danglies on the sleeve and the flowers all throughout the center. And I gotta be honest, don't like it as much as I like the base cardigan. Well, I feel successful because I did make something quite similar to the top that I was inspired by. And we hit all of the notes that I wanted, which was the sleeves and the little danglies. I mean, look at that. It's just so cute. But I don't have a good eye for where to place all of them. So this is what we got. And I do think that they look adorable. So I tried to stagger the flowers and the hearts, and I think that they turned out just darling, absolutely darling. But I think I don't know, maybe there's not enough of them. The best part of them being removable is that I'm able to play around with it. So this is what I did after the video and loved. So it's very important to me when I'm making a project that I am crocheting within my values and that I am doing things because I really want to do them and have them and use them, that I'm learning something while I'm doing it and I'm not just like rushing things to get it done. I mean, you can tell when people do that, right? They're using yarn that is like too thick for their projects, that it goes faster. They're using the cheapest yarn available. And I really don't want to fall into bad habits like that just for the sake of having something to show on a video. So for my rubric, I have a maximum of 10 points that I can earn, and 1 point is just a bonus point that I will award myself at the end. So starting with the first category of technique. I'm giving myself a 3 for this category because I learned something very valuable to my craft, which was this sleeve style. So usually I would make a just flat rectangle and just crochet that on or sew that on. And having this kind of like U umbrella shape, oh my gosh, what a game changer. It looks so nice and fitted that I am really happy with it. So definitely glad I took the time to try and do that. The second category is the construction of the garment. And for this, I would say that this is a simple construction. It's just two, front pieces and a back piece and the sleeves. But I am going to give myself a two, some bespoke elements, because this is not just a simple construction because of the sleeves and because of the waves and having to kind of trouble work all of those things. This ended up being a very unique piece. So give myself 2 points there. And then finally, for the finished product, I will rate myself a 3. I can see myself wearing this very often. Right now, with all of the dangly pieces, I mean, I have so many just t-shirts and dresses that are begging to have this on it. And for the rest of the year, when I can take all of these things off and then just have a normal, very cute cardigan, yeah. So I'm quite glad I decided not to add them on permanently and just kind of tack them on and make them easy to remove in the future. So that, yeah, this is a wardrobe staple. This is officially a staple. I think that it is really well done. I've got all my ends woven in, and I just cannot wait to get a lot of wear out of this spring. It's a little too cold, but this is a perfect layering piece. I always struggle with my crochet being able to put on my coat over it. So I'm often, when I leave the house, having to take my crochet off so that I can put my rain jacket on or my winter coat on, because you just can't bend your arms. So this will be very easy to layer, which means I can wear it out a lot more than some of my other pieces probably. So that is going to be great. And the bonus point I'm going to give myself for the danglies. I think that they turned out so cute. They're so fun. I like how they're kind of reactive to all of the movements, and crochet can be a very structured, kind of stiff fabric. So having this little bit of fun is perfect. I'm quite happy with it. That gives me a total of 9 points, which is an A, and this is an absolutely passing grade for this cardigan. I am so happy with it. So thank you so much for watching. If you wanted to subscribe and see more projects, I got a lot of yarn behind me that is just burning a hole in my stash that I cannot wait to get to. I think the next thing I want to use is this giant blue cone of yarn, but we'll see. We got to just scroll through, find some more inspiration, see what the next project should be. So if you wanted to subscribe and see more of that, feel free. And by the way, thank you so much to everyone who subscribed between when I started this video and when I ended it. We are now at 300 subscribers, which is very insane. Thank you so much for subscribing. You what we're gonna have a lot of fun. Hopefully you learned a lot. And if you decide to make something like this, please tag me so that I can see it. I am very interested. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.